Welcome to another episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Just hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We have some great guests coming your way, and we've had great guests. You can dig back into the library and find what you like. We're really proud of what we're doing. We hope you'll join us. Today, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Who doesn't like diversity? Equity may not mean what you think it means. Inclusion, sure, everyone's included, but do you get to get a job just so you can be included? I mean, DEI has been a contentious concept in America for years. Some people swear by it. They think it's almost a religion to some people. Others of us, not so much. Look, I've seen too many people succeed on their own merits, whether they're gay, straight, trans, black, white, brown. I guess we're all distinguishing colors now in this day and age. So why do we need DEI? It's like the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action. Why? Because people can do this on their own. It doesn't matter anymore how you identify. Excuse me. And I think the identity politics is what people are so tired of. Well, we have two examples for you today of how this DEI elimination is being viewed out in the press. Again, the sort of traditional but non-traditional press here. I've got one article from Hot Air if you don't know, at hotair.com, they do a lot of things, but they are of a conservative bent. And then I've got one article from Vox, VOX, and if you don't know, they're more of a progressive bent. So I thought it would be fun to compare and contrast these two articles. I'm going to start with Hot Air because their headline, and we'll link these for you in the show notes, their headline is Trump's DEI executive order is lit. Lit, as the cool kids say, means it's awesome. And this is written by David Strom, okay, of Hot Air. I'll just go ahead and read. Thank you, David, for allowing us to read this. With all the weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth from the left, it was hard to miss the fact that Donald Trump issued an executive order that banned the use of DEI and DEI principles in the federal government. And then he posts an X post from Niall Gardner, outstanding. Donald Trump puts all diversity staff on leave immediately. Okay. Back to the article. We all know that orders and laws intended to achieve this goal are regularly ignored at the state level using, quote, one simple trick, as they say. Change the wording, not the actual policies. Oh gosh, this is so true. They can take DEI and rename it. I mean, they love renaming things on the left. They love changing the language. So that's the one simple trick. Back to the article. Many of us were concerned that Trump's executive order would follow the same pattern. After all, it's not like the people in charge of these programs are gone. They usually get moved to human resources or are tucked away in other places within the organization. Trump knows this and came up with a few simple tricks of his own to stamp out this practice. It was genius. And here it is. This is from the executive order. The Office of Personnel Management, OPM, directed agencies to place DEI office staffers on paid leave. Not just move them to HR, put them on paid leave. Take down all public DEI-focused web pages, and cancel any DEI-related training by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. That was January 22nd. The memo also encouraged employees at federal agencies to inform on those attempting to disguise DEI programs. Okay? To inform on those. In other words, if you see people within the agency trying to disguise DEI in some other form, you inform, you tell on them. Okay, you snitch. Federal department and agency bosses are required to ask employees, quote, if they know of any efforts to disguise these DEI programs by using coded or imprecise language. The memo, issued on Tuesday, January 21st, 2025, included a template email for bosses to send to employees, which asks them to report to OPM if they are, quote, aware of a change in any contract description or personnel position description since November 5th, 2024, election day, to obscure the connection between the contract and DEIA or similar ideologies. Wait a minute. Did you hear that? DEIA. I think the A now stands for accessibility. So we've added, this is, you know what? This is like LGBT, Q, plus. They keep adding letters. So now it's not just DEI, it's DEIA. Doesn't it feel like things are moving really fast? And I think that's kind of a good thing. We're sort of making up for lost time, trying to get the world back on its axis in a way. Now, the Chinese US Treasury hack, a new virus may be spreading in China. What else, though, is unfolding behind the scenes? Or worse, what critical information aren't you getting? Maybe it's being hidden. I don't know. But why gamble your financial future? You don't need to do that. Regardless of who's in office, safeguarding your wealth is absolutely essential. And many of us are hopeful as Trump is back in the Oval Office. But we all remember the challenges of the last election and the interference that hindered progress. And we see the Senate dragging its feet on the appointments right now. So relying solely on digital systems or the banks, I don't know. Is that a risk you can afford to take? Why don't you take a look at American Independence Gold? Visit tafoyagold.com now to learn more. You can call 833-324-4653. You know, for generations, gold and silver have been the ultimate safe haven, weathering wars, recessions, and market crashes. This is more than just about owning gold. It's about taking control of your financial future. As a proud veteran-owned company, which we love that, American Independence Gold goes the extra mile by supporting military families. They cover custodial fees for life on qualifying accounts, and they donate a portion of every purchase to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Don't wait to secure your future. Why don't you act before it's too late? Visit tafoyagold.com. It's there on the screen, TAFOYA gold.com. Or you can call 833-324-4653. Call them today. That's 833-324-4653 or tafoyagold.com. Make the smart move for your future today at TAFOYA gold.com, tafoyagold.com. Back to the article by David Strom. It's a 1-2 punch. Send the DEI zealots home without violating civil service laws and encourage employees to root out the hidden grifting. It also sets up a predicate for firing people who don't follow the rules by hiding the programs by changing the wording of contracts. Of course, you will never be able to destroy something so deeply ingrained in a bureaucracy. Tearing it out root and branch is the goal, but DEI is like a weed that refuses to die. I think they call those dandelions in my front yard. But Trump's EO was designed to plant some landmines for the unwary who have been preparing for months to skirt the order, making it much more difficult to finesse the rules and hopefully much more costly to those who try to do so. In other words, the order was not just symbolic or aspirational. The goal is to find a way to fire the employees who have been distorting the merit-based system and replace it with racialist policies. There's embedded in this article is an ex post from Steve Forbes, the CEO of Forbes, who writes, federal bureaucrats plan resistance to Trump administration. A recent survey of senior government employees revealed that 42% plan to work against the incoming Trump administration. Can't DOJ do something with those employees? And we're going to eliminate positions, right? Back to the article by Strom. Again, this is hot air. About half of all federal bureaucrats say that they will resist Trump policies they don't like. And they succeeded in many cases during Trump's first term when he was President Trump 45. This time around, real costs will be imposed on those who do. And I have no doubt that Trump will find a way to punish them for doing so. It's a necessary corrective for a system that places too much power in the hands of bureaucrats who see themselves as the permanent government, and elections as an inconvenience, not a mandate. No doubt there will be lawsuits intended to stymie Trump's efforts, but a, quote, shock and awe approach will most likely have the intended effect. His policies also open up more space for the private sector to make profound changes to their organizations. The sooner resistance figures start paying high prices for opposition to Trump, the sooner real change will happen. All right, that's the hot air article. Now we're going to switch over to the Vox article on the same topic. And its title is Trump's Sweeping New Order Tries to Dismantle DEI in Government and the Private Sector. Now, I want to remind people that many companies have already started to eliminate their DEI departments. Same with some colleges and universities. That's going to be the toughest frontier, I think, in this regard. But here we go with Vox. Trump's sweeping new order tries to dismantle DEI in government and the private sector. The order shows that the anti-wokeness crusaders now have immense power. It's always about power. This is by Andrew Prokop. This published January 22nd, 2025. Andrew Prokop, by the way, is a senior politics correspondent at Vox. He's been covering the White House elections, etc. I will quote from his article now. New executive actions from the Trump administration on Tuesday, January 21st, make clear that not only is President Donald Trump using his power to purge the practice of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, from the federal government, he's acting to try to purge it from American culture as a whole. Okay, I can't disagree with that assertion. He doesn't have the power. No president has the power to purge it from American culture, except that maybe the voters asked him to. I'll continue from the article. In an executive order Tuesday night, Trump dismantled the decades-old. I don't know how we tolerated it for so long. Trump dismantled the decades-old requirements that federal contractors practice affirmative action by trying to employ more women and people of color. Trump's acting chief of the Office of Personnel Management, the office that oversees the Federal Civil Service, also ordered that all employees of DEIA, there's that A again, right? This is sort of a recent development, and that stands for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. See, if they add enough nice words to it, you'll say, oh, that's all a good thing. We should all have access. We do have all have access. You know what? We got it in the Constitution. We all get to pursue happiness. We all get to pursue jobs. We all get to pursue education. How we do it is up to us. And the government should not be out there picking and choosing based on things like race and gender. I'm sorry. Okay. So the office that oversees the Federal Civil Service also ordered that all employees of DEIA offices at federal agencies be placed on paid administrative leave by the end of the day, Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. But Trump went further, also taking aim at DEI in the private and nonprofit sectors. His executive order instructed the Justice Department and other agencies to identify, quote, the most egregious and discriminatory DEI practitioners in their jurisdiction. Well, here's the thing. Discrimination is illegal. So and we have seen examples of egregious and discriminatory DEI. We have seen universities offer programs only to people of color or of the LGBTQ community. Like, no, if you're white, straight, you can't apply, that kind of thing. That's discrimination. I can just hear the people out there going, well, whites have had the advantage and the privilege for so long. This is what we're trying to get away from, folks. Just merit. Use your skills, use your words, use your strength. Build yourself up. You can do it. Everyone else in American history has. And I can point to people of every persuasion who have. Okay, back to the article. Every federal agency, the order went on, must send a recommendation to the Attorney General of up to 9 potential investigations of corporations, large nonprofits, foundations with assets of $500 million or more, higher education institutions with endowments of $1 billion or more, or bar and medical associations. All this, the order said, was meant to, quote, encourage the private sector to end illegal discrimination and preferences, including DEI. I can't tell you how many people have asked me about sleep cream and have ended up going and trying it for themselves and love it. I got an email from someone the other day, a complete stranger, who wrote to tell me how happy they were that their wife, who is having trouble sleeping because she's ill, has gotten the sleep cream and it's really helped her, and that they got great customer service from our friends at Sleep Cream. We love them. So sleep is a big problem. And sleep cream has helped me. I must tell you this. I sleep so much better because it's not a drug. It's not a prescription. It's a topical cream. So I just apply it at bedtime. It's really simple. And you know what? I was skeptical. I thought, yeah, really? But I tried it and it works. Okay. The company is Sleep Cream, and they use an all-natural CBD combined with the finest essential oils. I particularly like the rose. So I'll just put it on the insides of my forearms, insides of my wrists, maybe on my neck, bottoms of my feet, wherever. You can find them at sleepcream.com, and the cream is spelled CREME, like creme. Just try Sleep Cream for a couple nights. See if it works for you as well as it does for me. And if you don't find that you sleep better, Sleep Cream will refund your purchase, guaranteed. You don't even have to return anything. Go to sleepcream.com. That's sleepcream.com, with cream spelled CREME.com. And for the next few weeks, use the code GAMEDAY at checkout, all one word, GAMEDAY. And you can get free standard shipping on your first order. Again, the code is GAMEDAY. If you're ready for your best sleep ever, sleep, CREME.com, sleepcream.com. Use that code GAMEDAY for free standard shipping on your first order, sleepcream.com. I'll continue from the article. DEI is broadly efforts at companies, universities, and other institutions to manage their internal cultures on identity-related matters, from hiring to workplace policies. Its supporters say DEI is necessary to combat bias and ensure employees of underrepresented backgrounds feel comfortable and supported. Folks, life isn't always about feeling comfortable. And if we just tell people they're supposed to feel comfortable all the time, they're not going to be resilient people. They're not going to be people who overcome obstacles. They're not going to be people of strength and courage and have the scar tissue that shows that they can do whatever the hell they want. Enough of this, oh, we just want to make you feel comfortable. But it's an individual's job to feel comfortable in their own skin, brave enough, courageous enough, and strong enough to go walk into any place they want and apply for a job or for membership. So they want to feel comfortable and supported. Now, the critics of DEI say it often crosses the line into speech policing and advances a progressive political agenda that conservatives don't share. Trump's legal justification for all this is his claim that DEI programs or race and sex-based preferences can violate civil rights laws. He claims that they often amount to illegal discrimination, the implication being discrimination against whites, Asian Americans, and men when they do not receive such preferences. Preferences? The order argues that, quote, individual merit, aptitude, hard work, and determination, not race or sex, should matter. What exactly crosses the line to make a DEI program illegal is left extremely vague in the order. All this marks a seismic cultural and legal shift away from the 2010s and the racial reckoning of 2020, when these programs became widespread across the U.S. Just for review, 2020 was the COVID year. It was also the year that George Floyd died when he was stopped by police. And, you know, the Derek Chauvin, who's in jail serving the life sentence for murder, essentially. And that was the racial reckoning. Okay, a few years ago, they seemed to many to be a common sense response to enduring structural discrimination. Now, they might get you investigated. Okay, so what they're saying here in Vox is that a few years ago, DEI seemed to a lot of people, I'm translating, to be common sense, to be a response to enduring structural discrimination. See, what they decided in 2020 was because George Floyd, who had fentanyl in his system and resisted police in this whole episode, and yes, it's a horrifying video to watch, but because of that incident in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I live, that systemic racism was still alive and well because of that incident. So the response, the common sense response to that systemic racism was to ensure this DEI. Going back to the article. But the rollback goes even further than that. Trump revoked a 1965 order by President Lyndon B. Johnson calling for affirmative action in federal contracting, which has become a pillar of the civil rights canon in the decades since. But I don't understand, because affirmative action at colleges and universities was struck down by the Supreme Court. And this was an order by Lyndon B. Johnson calling for affirmative action in federal contracting. Now, 1965 was a long time ago. We're talking 50 years, right? 60. Oh, hello, math. 60 years. I still think I'm younger than I am. In the last 60 years, we haven't made enough progress to say, maybe we don't need this anymore. We've come a long way. We've had a black president. We've had a lot of really successful people of color in America. Back to the article. This is Vox. The order also underscores the ascendance to power of the anti-wokeness crusaders who, irate at what they viewed as increasing progressive dominance in American culture, came up with a detailed plan for using federal power to combat it. They are now seeing that plan put into action by the President of the United States. So they say there's an ascendance of power of the anti-wokeness crusaders. Well, if you mean that more people voted for Trump than for Kamala Harris and wanted to see Trump implement this, everything that he talked about on the campaign trail, this was no secret. This was no secret, because this has gone beyond just advancing people of color. This has gone to allowing men to compete in women's sports because they identify as women. So this is beyond what Lyndon B. Johnson was trying to accomplish back in 1965. And that's why the anti-woke crusaders and many who support them voted this president into office. Back to the article. In a certain sense, this latest move is nothing surprising, given that conservatives have long criticized affirmative action practices that were adopted after the civil rights era. Have long criticized? What does long mean? A year? 5 years? Knowing that affirmative action really is no longer necessary because we see the progress? How long are you talking about? Long criticized. What does that mean? I'm asking questions. Supporters of affirmative action argued that such programs were necessary to help broaden access to institutions dominated by white men due to long-standing societal discrimination. Okay. I think this is changing. I think it has changed. We've seen a ton of progress. We cannot acknowledge the progress. The progressives cannot, the supporters of this cannot acknowledge the progress. They won't acknowledge the progress. They won't acknowledge the numbers of diverse voices in the media, diverse people in politics, in public office, diverse people at the heads of corporations. They won't acknowledge this. And so they want to just keep going. But we see the progress has been made. And you know what? Maybe it's time to just let people focus on merit. There is a lot going on in the world, and pretty much all of it affects us in some way, shape, or form financially. We don't know what the future holds. We don't know what we are or aren't being told. So gambling your financial future, why would you want to do that? Now, regardless of who's in office, you want to safeguard your wealth and you want to grow your wealth. And many of us are hopeful right now that we've got a new administration in here in 2025, but we know there are going to be challenges. We see the Senate trying to block and slow down some of the appointments of cabinet members. So relying solely on digital systems or banks, that's a risk you can't really afford to take. And that's why I urge you to look at American Independence Gold. Here's how you find out more. Just visit tafoyagold.com, TAFOYA gold.com to learn more. Here's a number you can call as well. Get a pen. 833-324-4653. 833-324-4653. You know, for generations, gold and silver has been the ultimate safe haven. It's weathered wars, recessions, market crashes. This is more than just owning gold. It's about taking control of your financial future. And as a proud veteran-owned company, American Independence Gold goes the extra mile by supporting military families. They cover custodial fees for life on qualifying accounts, and they donate a portion of every purchase to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, one of our favorites. Don't wait to secure your future. Act before it's too late. Go to tafoyagold.com, TAFOYA gold.com. It's in the show notes. It's there on your screen. 833-324-4653. If you want to call instead, 833-324-4653 or tafoyagold.com. Make the smart move for your future today at tafoyagold.com. Back to the article. The right has long had a two-part critique. First, that these programs deprioritize qualifications and quote-unquote merit. They do, because they prioritize race and gender. So they deprioritize qualifications and merit. If you have a list of priorities, the top one in affirmative action is race and sex, not merit. And second, that programs to benefit minorities or women accounted to reverse discrimination against whites and men, and in recent years, Asian Americans. We know this to be true. We've seen the numbers of Asian Americans who have unbelievable academic records not allowed into certain universities, not accepted. That, far from being compliant with civil rights laws, affirmative action actually violates the principle of race neutrality by doing its own kind of discrimination. This is what Vox is saying that the right has a problem with. In the 1990s and 2000s, conservative activists won victories in certain states that approved bans of affirmative action, but they kept coming up short at the Supreme Court, and the status quo prevailed in federal policy. Then in the 2010s, the practice evolved into a newfound trend toward DEI programs, which focus not just on affirmative action in hiring, but on more broadly managing institutions' internal culture on identity-related matters, culminating in an intense focus on such topics during the racial reckoning of 2020. During Trump's first term, he and his appointees did not make challenging affirmative action or DEI a top priority, but in 2020 and the years after Trump's defeat, activists on the right increasingly focused on pushing back against wokeness. Their number included Trump's policy expert, Stephen Miller, who was mainly preoccupied with immigration during Trump's first term, but branched out to focus on challenging DEI as well during the Biden years, when he founded a legal nonprofit to challenge Biden's policies. And in 2023, the Supreme Court finally delivered the anti-affirmative action ruling long sought by the right, severely curtailing the use of affirmative action in college admissions. And we heard from colleges and universities that they were going to find a way around it by using other language. rolling back the LBJ order specifically to dismantle affirmative action in federal contracting while putting private sector and nonprofit institutions on notice that DEI initiatives they deem discriminatory could land them in legal hot water. I wonder why Biden didn't pardon all of these DEI activists ahead of time. He could have handled all of this. With his OPM order, Trump's team is also outright purging DEI supporters from federal government, and they're also warning federal employees against fighting back. The OPM announcement stressed that higher-ups are, quote, aware of efforts by some in government to disguise these programs by using coded or imprecise language, and instructed employees to report any changes made since the election to obscure connections with DEI. Quote, failure to report this information within 10 days may result in adverse consequences, the announcement adds. The question now is how American institutions will respond. Enthusiasm for DEI has already cooled in recent years as several major corporations have rolled back their efforts. More companies could follow their lead, using these legal threats as justification. More progressive-leaning colleges and nonprofits may be more inclined to fight back, but they too face the threat of investigations. Trump's order calls out major universities, nonprofits, and foundations as potential, quote, egregious offenders. Potentially, they could be egregious offenders. Legal challenges against Trump's order will clearly be coming. Progressives could argue that the order goes too far and threatens constitutional rights of speech or association, but whether the Supreme Court will sympathize with progressives is questionable, given that the 6 conservatives share the view that affirmative action amounts to discrimination. The way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. That's a quote from Chief Justice John Roberts. He wrote that in 2007. Whether the Supreme Court will sympathize with progressives is questionable. The Supreme Court calls balls and strikes. Is it constitutional? That's what they look for. For now, what is clear is that Trump's team is making an all-out effort to dismantle both the legal framework and the larger culture that have underpinned affirmative action and DEI in recent years. It is unclear what pushback they will receive, and if none materializes, the ultimate legacy of the racial reckoning could well be a backlash that ends up rolling back decades of progressive policy. I'm going to make a prediction that people will be more successful with less regulation in America. There are just too many stories, folks, and don't tell me they're the exception. Don't tell me that. Exceptional people do exceptional things. And if it is in your mind to be exceptional, go be exceptional. Be brave, do good. We'll see you next time.